Hypnotized, I don't know why she got me feeling this way. She's got a way about her. She's got a way about her.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel and welcome to another video. I'm so glad you're here and I'm so glad you clicked on today's video. You guys already know what we're doing. It's one of my favorite videos to film on my channel as well as just watch in general. I love watching monthly wrap-ups, seeing what other people are reading and liking in the book community. I am going to be sharing all the books I read in the month of April with you guys. I feel like I've been in a really good reading kick lately, so it's just been happy vibes over here. I read a total of 9 books in the month of April. Honestly, 9 books in 1 month is such a good reading month for me. I typically read around 6 or 7 books, so reading 9 books this month was definitely a plus for me. And I'm really happy with how everything turned out. We had some very high ratings this month. We read some good books. We started some good series. We are gonna hop right into my April wrap up. I'm so excited. I know exactly where I want to start. You already know what it is. First book I'm gonna start off with is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the ACOTAR series. And I have to say, you guys were not kidding when you said everything in book 2 gets crazy and everything is not what it seems. I wound up giving this 5 stars. I believe I gave book 1 5 stars as well. This series is one of the first fantasy series I've really read in such a long time, so I've really been enjoying it. The hype around this series is so real and I cannot wait to keep going in it. I'm just gonna come out and say it. Tamlin from book 1 did not show up in book 2. I don't know who that was in book 2, but that was not the Tamlin I remember from book 1. I'm just gonna say that. Totally caught me off guard reading this story and seeing how things changed so drastically. In book 1, I thought I knew like everything about the story, about the characters, the romance. I thought I had a pretty good grasp on what was going to happen in the series. And then this book happened and everything changed. And now I will forever not trust fantasy books. Reese's character throughout this entire story was just chef's kiss, I must say. The slow burn in this story is probably one of my favorite slow burns I have ever read. I feel like that says a lot. I'm really iffy with slow burns. I do love slow burn romances, but sometimes I feel like the author draws it out a little bit too much and I find myself getting very uninterested. I'm getting distracted and basically I just lose interest in those characters. But I have to say, for this being as big of a book as it is, I loved the slow burn in this. It was worth every single page, every chapter, every second I spent reading this that led up to this explosion just made me so happy. I was so appreciative of the slow burn throughout this entire story. The build up, the bonding, the bickering, everything about it was just so perfect in my opinion. I love the relationships that developed throughout this story. I loved all the new characters that we were introduced to in this story, the Bat Boys, and of course I just loved watching Feyre grow as an individual herself, because in book 1 she does have this independence to her, but at the same time she's kind of not independent. She doesn't know how to read, she doesn't know how to fight. But in book 2 we see her character development like flourish and I absolutely loved it so much. I think we can all agree when I say Rhysand is probably the biggest woman supporter throughout this entire book. I absolutely love that. I think that's why I fell so in love with his character, because of how much he supported Feyre, but also how much he supported women in general. I loved his character and I loved him for that so much. But we just watch Feyre throughout the entire story grow as an individual. She learns to read, she learns to fight, all these things that in book 1 she was kind of told didn't matter. And now in book 2 she's learning how to do these things for herself, and I just love the independence that she gains. It was such an emotional ending and I was so emotionally unstable. I was so emotionally unstable when I finished this book. I had to take so long to just sit with it, marinate with it, process it. There are definitely certain scenes from this book that will stay with me forever and I cannot wait to move on to book 3 to see what happens. Moving on, I think I'll jump to a book that was a very big surprise for me. We have Wretched by Emily McIntyre. This is book 3 in the Never After novels. I gave this 2 stars. If you guys are familiar with my channel, my videos, if you've been watching me for a while, you have seen many reading vlogs of me tackling this series. I am obsessed with Emily McIntyre. I love the idea of taking fairy tales we love and putting a twist on them. I love that the stories revolve around the villains. I love that they're dark romance. I was very surprised when I read this and it wound up being a 2-star read for me. This is a Wizard of Oz reimagining, and it basically tells the story of the Wicked Witch of the West. When I read it through the first time, I had to keep stopping because I really did not like the storyline. I didn't like the characters. I just felt uncomfortable half the time reading this. With that being said, shortly after finishing this book, I took some time to process what I had just read. I actually tried to delete some of the memories from this book out of my head because it is just really disturbing in my opinion. After taking some time sitting with it, processing it, I did come to the conclusion that the storyline Emily McIntyre chose for this story did make sense considering the Wizard of Oz. At the time, I just didn't understand it, and I think that was a reason that led me to not liking the story so much. I still did not like this. Like, I didn't like the characters. I didn't like certain scenes in this book were just... they were so cringy and uncomfortable. I really felt like there was no chemistry between these characters. But again, if I think about it, if it is a romance between the Wicked Witch of the West and the Tin Man doesn't have a heart. So it kind of makes sense. And the more connections I make from this story to the Wizard of Oz, the story makes sense, but I just didn't like it. Like, I still didn't like it. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this. If you're not familiar, these are dark reimaginings. So this isn't really telling the story between a witch and a Tin Man. It's telling the story of very real people in the real world. There's just little connections in the story that come from the Wizard of Oz. Take from this what you will. If you have a similar reading style to myself though, I don't recommend this. But if you do want to try it out for yourself because you love the Wizard of Oz or you just love the Never After novels like myself, definitely check for trigger warnings. They are dark romances, so there's going to be very weird, twisted, disturbing stuff in these books. There's some weird stuff in this book that happened that I feel like I can never go back from. So next up we have Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. Look how gorgeous this cover is. It's one of my favorite covers I own. And then it is a hardcover, so when you take the sleeve off, this was such a cute, light fantasy read that honestly made me fall in love with the genre so much more, and it has definitely pushed me to pick up more in the fantasy genre. This was really cute though. It gives off all those fairy tale vibes, which is probably another reason why I adored it so much. This though tells the story of a girl named Evangeline Fox. She strikes a deal with the Prince of Hearts to essentially stop her one true love from marrying the wrong girl. In return for striking a deal with the Prince of Hearts though, Evangeline now owes him 3 kisses at any time he wants, which... when I read that, I had so many different theories and ideas of what was going to come out of it. After the first kiss though, Evangeline starts to realize that maybe there's a little bit more to the deal than she realized, and then she also realizes why you never make a deal with a fate. There's always this underlying secret deal to their big deal that you never realize. Also, if you're not familiar, this is actually a spin-off series to the Caraval series, and a lot of people say that you don't need to read the Caraval trilogy before jumping into this. I have to say though, I kind of wish I started with the Caraval trilogy because you see characters from that series pop up in these books as well. You technically don't have to start with Caraval to jump into these books. You're gonna want to read Caraval anyway, so you might as well start with Caraval and then jump into these books. This is a 4-star read though. I absolutely love this. I love the fantasy, fairy tale vibes. And so immediately after, I jumped into the Ballad of Never After, which is book 2 in the series. This was a 5-star for me. This was incredible. I'm obsessed with it. I was obsessed with the storyline, the characters, everything about it was just perfect to me. In this book, you basically continue the story of Evangeline Fox and Jax, who is the Prince of Hearts. This was just so much fun. The adventure and action in it is so exciting. It's so thrilling. There was also a little bit more romance in this book compared to book 1, and it made me so happy. I am hoping that book 3 kind of gives us the romance we want, because we get a little glimpse of it in here. Once again though, the only downside to reading fantasy and to this book specifically is the ending. The ending absolutely ripped my heart out, and I really am just hoping book 3 wraps up beautifully and it gives us everything that we're hoping for. But it's a great series. I highly recommend start with Caraval first. It will definitely make the series so much more fun for you. Next up we have book 1 and book 2 in the Dreamland Billionaire series. This is by Lauren Asher. I feel like the Dreamland Billionaire series is such a popular, hyped up series across the internet. So I finally decided to start it this month and I'm so happy I did. I'm honestly upset that I didn't pick these books up sooner because they are just so good. They really get you in the feels. They give off the best vibes and I'm just so happy with how these went. Book 1 is The Fine Print. This was 4 stars for me and it tells the story of Rowan and Zara. I would have to say this absolutely gives off all of the Disney vibes. I am obsessed with it. I love Disney World. I love Disney movies. I'm really big into all of that stuff. So this was like a dream come true for me. This had a grumpy meets sunshine trope. It has the billionaire trope. It has a little hint of enemies to lovers in there, as well as the workplace trope. Rowan Cain is in the business of creating fairy tales. He is the CEO of Dreamland, which is basically Disney in this book. When Rowan's grandfather passes away, his last wish for Rowan is to basically come up with a renovation plan for Dreamland that will make a positive difference in the world. The whole story really revolves around Rowan trying to come up with this crazy renovation plan. Enter Zara. She actually works at Dreamland. She has all these really cool, crazy ideas that can make the theme park better. Workers can submit their ideas to become a creator, get on the Dreamland creator team, and Zara submits one of her ideas that catches Rowan's eye. So he decides to take a chance, bring her into the creator program. This was such a fun read and I really loved Rowan and Zara's dynamic. My favorite part of this is probably the character development. In the beginning of the story, Rowan is this very selfish, grumpy guy. We really watch him change and evolve throughout the entire story. Also watch Zara evolve because in the beginning, she definitely doubts herself. She has insecurities about her ideas. We watch her grow into such a positive, optimistic person. This was absolutely adorable. If you love Disney and stuff like that, this is such a good read for you. There's also this one chapter where they spend the whole day in the theme park and they go on rides and they're eating all the food, and it just made me so happy because I felt like I was in Disney reading it, and it was just the best feeling, the best vibes. Immediately after, I picked up book 2, which is Terms and Conditions. I hear a lot of people say that this is like their favorite book in the series. This story follows Declan Cain. He is the older brother of Rowan, and his grandfather also had a last wish for him, and his last wish was for Declan to find a wife and have kids, which in my mind I thought was so crazy. But I think what his grandfather really wanted was to show Declan that there's more to life than just work, because Declan's character throughout this entire story is work is my life, work is number one, work comes before everything else. So I think that's the lesson his grandfather was trying to teach him. Very similar to Rowan, Declan is a very grumpy but very ambitious worker. He takes his grandfather's request a little bit too literal. He finds himself in a fake marriage. It is to his assistant Iris, who has been working her butt off for him for the past 3 years. She probably knows Declan better than anyone else. The whole story revolves around that. It is a roller coaster, but nonetheless, I love this story just as much as I loved Rowan and Zara's. It was so cute. I'm so excited to pick up the last book in the series because I hear so many incredible things about it. I love Lauren Asher's writing style. It's very easygoing. They're very fast paced. There's definitely something missing from these books that kept them from being 5 stars. If I had to talk cons of these books, I'd have to say in this one, Rowan drove me crazy. I thought he was just overly annoying and grumpy at times, and it just drove me crazy. And then in this one, it was Iris who actually drove me crazy. I feel like she would forget about her job a lot of the times. It was really frustrating at times, but nonetheless, I love these. They were 4 stars. Highly recommend this series as well as Lauren Asher in general. I really enjoy her writing style and her characters. Next up, we have The Elite by Kara Cass. This is book 2 in the Selection series. I believe I rated this 3 stars because America Singer in this, girl, figure out what you want. If you're not familiar with this entire series though, the Selection is basically The Bachelor. This takes place in a dystopian world where there's classes and different rankings. There's kings and queens, and Prince Maxon is looking for a bride. They hold this event called The Selection when 36 girls go to the castle and basically compete for the heart of the prince. America Singer is who these books revolve around. She is selected to go to the castle, but the only problem is that she's in love with someone back home who is below her class, so they can't even be together because their rankings are different. She goes to the castle anyways because that's what her family wants for her. I really like the other stuff that's happening in this book, like the fact that the kingdom is basically under attack by this rebellion that is trying to overthrow them. I really like the idea of that, and I kind of wish we were able to explore more of it in these books. I rated this 3 stars just because I don't like how repetitive it was, and I don't like that America didn't know what she really wanted. She kept going back and forth, and it really drove me crazy. I do hear book 3 is like the best though, and it's supposed to really wrap everything up. So I'm hoping everything works out the way I want it to. Like, I have theories. 3 stars, very easygoing read. Getting down to the last 2. Next up I have Addicted for Now by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This series has been driving me crazy. It's such a hyped up series and I've just not been enjoying it the way most people enjoy it. There's something about Lillian Lowe that I personally just don't care for, and I do think it's because these books revolve around addiction. It's just very different for me to read about, but I wound up giving this 4 stars because the development in this story, absolutely incredible. This is book 3 in the series, and it continues on the story of Lily and Lo, who are both struggling with their addiction. Lo is addicted to alcohol and Lily is addicted to sex. In this book, we are kind of seeing them navigate their addictions, trying to get better for one another. Because these books revolve around addiction, it is definitely different for me, and I do get very annoyed reading them because a lot of the time I will get frustrated wondering why Lily does this or Lo does that, and it's like they have addictions, so that's why. But in my mind, I still get very irritated reading their actions. I'm just like, don't do that. Why are you doing that? You're sabotaging yourself. These books really drive me crazy, but the main reason why I've been trying to get through them is because I really want to jump into the Calloway Sister series because I hear nothing but incredible things about that. And now that I've finished book 3, we can finally jump in to the first book in the Calloway Sister series. But nonetheless, I gave this 4 stars. The first half of it, I was like, no way, it's gonna be 2-3 stars. It felt very repetitive, it was boring. And then once we hit the halfway mark, the story really took off and I started to really enjoy it. A lot of stuff was happening and we start to see such amazing character development. 4 stars, I have to say, it gets so much better once you get to the halfway mark. So if you're also reading it, don't give up. And the final book I read is Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. I love this cover. It is so cute. So, Magnolia Parks, you guys know if you've watched previous monthly TBRs of mine, Miss Magnolia Parks has been on my monthly TBR since I think January, honestly. It has moved with me every month because I have not picked it up, and it is solely because this is such a toxic, unhealthy, at times maybe cringy read, and I saw so many people talk about this on the internet that it just honestly turned me off of this book. I honestly didn't want to read about a toxic, unhealthy relationship, about 2 people who continuously hurt each other but keep going back to one another. They're hurting people around them. I didn't want to read that. But another thing that is really interesting about this book is the writing style is very different. It's not like anything I've ever read before. I've seen a lot of people compare this to the world of Gossip Girl, but you just place it in London. We're watching all these super rich kids that come from super rich families. They go to fundraisers, galas, events. It's super fun. It's super glitzy and glam. And honestly, every chapter of this felt like a new episode. Something crazy would happen in the chapter, and then the next chapter would be like completely different time. So the writing style definitely caught me off guard, but once you get a few chapters in, it definitely gets better. It's easier to understand. But now, with all that being said, I have to say this book caught me off guard because I wound up loving it more than I thought I ever could. It was a 5-star read for me. That's crazy. It's even crazy to be saying right now. And I just want to reiterate again, this is a very toxic book, okay? If you're gonna read this, check for trigger warnings because it's a very toxic, unhealthy relationship. There's drug abuse in here. There's just so many crazy things that happen in this book that you should definitely check for trigger warnings before jumping into. The roller coaster you are sent on when reading this is unreal. That being said too, me giving this a 5-star doesn't mean that I approve of the relationships in this book, but the feelings this book like pulled out of me was just unreal. I really enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed the roller coaster I was on. BJ and Magnolia's relationship was just such an emotional one. This book definitely makes you feel things. You can really feel the love between Magnolia and BJ. You can feel the jealousy, the hatred, the hope, the longing. You'll be sobbing and laughing throughout this entire book, and I loved every second of it. And honestly, I wouldn't even call this a romance because it just portrays such toxic and unhealthy relationships that no one should really be romanticizing. But the entire story was just very entertaining. It was very different. Again, it gives off Gossip Girl vibes. You just want to know the drama. You just want to know the tea, so you keep on reading. I really enjoyed it nonetheless. It was 5 stars. I'm excited to move on in the series and see what happens. That is all for my April reading wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you had fun. We read 9 books in the month of April. That is just incredible. If I do say so myself, I am so proud of myself because again, I typically don't read that many books in a month. If you're interested in learning more about any of the books I talked about in today's video, definitely go check out previous videos of mine. I do reading vlogs for every book I read, so definitely go check out those if you want to learn more about them. April was an amazing reading month. I'm hoping May is just as amazing. Comment down below if you've read any of the books I mentioned in today's video and what you rated them. I am going to stop rambling and chewing your ears off. Stay tuned for my May TBR. That will be posted shortly after this one. But I love you guys so much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.